My name's Marcus, and I'm no expert comic book collector. With help from some not like-minded friends and you, our audience, I want to explore the amazing medium of comic books. This podcast is a reaction to all the common misconceptions I hear about comics as an art form. It's about how superheroes aren't the only type of stories you can find in comics. From true crime and memoir to historical fiction and sci-fi, comics have it all. This podcast is about educating people on what they can find out there and giving readers, new, old, or misinformed, something great to read. Listen up, nerds and future nerds. This is the VF Comics Podcast.
Welcome to the VF Comics Podcast, the best weekly comic book sequential art podcast dedicated to all types of readers. Each week, we will explore various topics, news, books, and talent in the medium of comics. I'm Marcus, and every week I am joined by a group of buds who do not share my opinions or tastes in the exploration of this fascinating world. With me this week is our friendly neighborhood barbarian, Jammin' James.
Fuck you, Marcus.
Oh, we're going TVMA for this episode. All right. I gotta put a mature content warning on it. Also here with us is the always friendly but oddly antagonistic Meg.
Hey.
Also joining us is the soothing voice of the only person I'd listen to ASMR recordings of, Tom.
Hello, how are you?
So every week we're going to have a variety of segments covering the many aspects of comics and the industry that produces them. This week and once per month going forward, we will be welcoming special guests from writers and artists to industry professionals and academics. This month's guest is doubled because we have the writer and artist behind Curses, a new comic series that I think everyone needs to know about. And we'll have a article up on our website at vfcomics.com, vfcomicspodcast.com on Thursday this week with a little preview to the book. So everybody, welcome Josef, Castiel.
Hey guys.
And Jacob Fleming.
Hi.
Yeah. Did I pronounce everyone's name right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, absolutely.
Even when someone has like a real basic name like John, I'm always worried about that. So on top of talking to these guys about their projects and their work, we're even going to include them and get their insight on some news and have them bring us this week's recommendations. So this first part of the episode is going to focus on you, Joe, and Jacob. And so you guys can take turns or intertwine. I'm not sure how much practice y'all have talking together for an interview. But tell us a little bit about your history and experience with comic books.
Jacob, you want to start?
Sure, yeah. I grew up loving comics. My first comic, I believe, was some issue of Wolverine, and I think I got it at the grocery store, and I was just like hooked. And then I was buying Wizard magazine, and I was getting, I forget, it was like Toys R Us. They sold bundles of comics, and I would just like hoard comics. Even if they were garbage, I was just loving them. And I was really taken by the art, and I really wanted to do that myself too. So I would sit down, and I would copy art out of the book, and practice drawing, and I would just sit in my room and read and draw, and that was kind of like my whole early upbringing related to comics.
Yeah, mine's funny, almost the opposite of Jacob. As a kid, I was just not allowed to get comics. It was seen as a waste of time. So what I did was I consumed every comic book cartoon that ever existed on the planet. Like I watched them all, the Spider-Man animated series, the Batman animated series, the X-Men, the Justice League, went through the whole thing. And it wasn't until I was graduated from school and started earning my own income that I was like, all right, I'm jumping headfirst into comics. And funny enough, my instinct was to jump into superhero comics. That was like right when the New 52 was happening, I think. So it was like, great, start from scratch. And it still felt kind of overwhelming, like I had missed out on 40 years of just intense kind of, but this person's related to that person, then they retconned that, and now he's reborn again, and he died, and now it's a different person, but he still has the memories of the old, and I was like, what's happening here, man? And then I started getting introduced into indie comics, basically just any non-superhero comics, and I love them with a passion, and I've been I have bookshelves of them now, ranging from comedy, fantasy, horror, whatever, across the board. And I've just been so enthralled with the stories that are told or can be told in comic books that really, until very recently, were never told in any other medium, essentially. So really just been enjoying it for the last about 15 years or so.
That you and I share very much a lot of the same history on our experience. It was around the time of the New 52 that I also started, and yeah, they were like, because a lot of characters got rebooted, but like Batman didn't get, like, they kept all of his history, which also didn't make sense.
And the Green Lantern carried on from the
still
long,
a mess. And Green Lantern, yeah,
long history that was happening before it, kind of thing.
Yeah, because they weren't going to tell Jeff Johns no.
Hey, Jeff, you said that you didn't have any comics. Did you have like Calvin and Hobbes?
I'm sorry. Let me rewind. I was obsessed with Calvin and Hobbes. I was thinking traditional comics. So I literally own every Calvin and Hobbes book of all time. And in fairness, I did have traditional comics. They were DuckTales comics, was what I had as a kid. Again, same thing. Got them at the grocery store. But yeah, no joke. I literally owned. I think it was one of the first books I ever read on my own as a child. I remember it vividly. Calvin and Hobbes, I own every book that has ever existed. And I think it also helped shape my sense of humor, too. Like the structure of setup and delivery for jokes, I started realizing a few years back
I could see that.
I got it from Calvin and Hobbes, Bill Watterson.
Nice. Bill Watterson is a good person to take after, for sure.
Oh, man.
Yeah. Oh, my gosh.
So, I mean, that kind of covers the next thing I was going to ask you guys about, like, you know, is there like well, at least for you, Joe, like, is there a definitive comic that inspires, you know, not just your work, but even just maybe the other things that you read or other things that you write?
I guess now...
And if not a comic, I mean, anything.
I guess the answer is, now that we've touched on it, would have been Calvin and Hobbes. And had Jacob not mentioned that, I would have said I don't know. But you're 100% right. That was I grew up in a time where, especially, I grew up in the late 80s, early 90s, where this is before, even when the internet existed, there weren't really, like, places to congregate and discuss about fandom for sort of like non-massively popular things. Granted, Calvin Hobbes, yes, was popular, but this was just a thing that I had on my own. That I didn't know anybody else, you know, who was reading it or whatever. I sort of appreciated, loved the humor, you know, and it was. I didn't have anyone to connect to it. I just knew that everything I was reading was just so joyous. You know, like, I love the art, I love the storytelling, the humor, and I'm realizing I realized a few years ago that it helped develop my sense of humor, my quick thinking, and again that setup, delivery sort of format kind of thing. Absolutely, that has framed a lot of my appreciation for satire and stuff like that in sort of like non-traditional context. You know, they're not knock jokes. They're not a stand-up comedian giving telling stories or whatever. It's just through art, setup and delivery. And I think that absolutely would be the foundation of where I get most of my inspiration from.
You know, it's awesome that you talk about that from like Bill Watterson's like delivery and the way that he structures a story through the panels. Because it made me instantly want to ask you, like, have you ever heard of Three Nuts? Have you ever? No. It's like someone a couple years back, I think it was like 2011, noticed a pattern in all of Charles Schultz's stuff that he delivered the punchline at the very end. And if you took away that panel, every character in a story is just massively depressed. Like they're all dealing with this big existential crisis that he would lighten up at the very end. But he was like, oh, if you remove this panel, this despair that's on all these characters just pervades throughout the whole story.
That's awesome.
And so he's got several strips where he's omitted that last panel. And it reads just so
there
grim.
Was something almost identical to that that's called, I think it's called Garfield minus Garfield.
Yes, Garfield without Garfield. Yes,
and it ends up actually being about this like very depressed John who's like having an existential crisis and is sort of talking to himself about a lot of these problems.
Yes. And I had never thought as a reader about how they put that, like how important that is until they they subtract that, and then I was like, oh my god, So
Yeah.
that's really great to hear that.
And now that I think
as a
about the
writer.
Peanuts thing that you mentioned, that's sort of the modern day, people on the internet, on Twitter and stuff like that, who are almost sort of like dealing with whatever pain they're going through with some jokes. A lot of times they just add LOL to the end of a sentence. Today was the worst day of my life.
Yes.
LOL. That was the modern equivalent. It sounds like of Charles Schultz, basically.
Absolutely.
Oh, wow, that's so true. Whoa.
Well, there you go.
I've never thought about
That's
that.
really cool. Jacob, so what has inspired you?
Well, shortly after I dove into comics at an early age, I picked up How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way, and like shredded that book completely. Just copied every illustration I could out of there. But also around that same time, I picked up Understanding Comics by Scott McCloud. And that one was, it still is extremely important and really interesting dissection of the whole storytelling medium. So that one stuck with me since I picked it up, and I since recommended that to Joe, and I think I've lost several copies over the years and had to pick it up.
I still have mine for sure.
Yeah. Well, and it's not just for that book in particular. It's not just the content; it's the delivery, the way he delivers it in a comic format, as he is narrating it himself, and the way he mixes art styles to show differences in the history. Scott McCloud is a genius.
Not only is it a great source of information, but it's such a brilliant delivery form that even if you just put aside how much easier it is to process that information, it's also immensely clever to deliver it in that format as well.
So for next, I want to specifically talk about curses, and I have so many questions and so many ideas, and I've got it right here. And since we're on video, I want to show everybody this is Curses, and it's the first 3 issues are so good. I believe Jacob, a mutual friend of ours, is who told me about you guys, and I mean, this is just some really good stuff here, just real high quality art and storytelling. But I'm going to let you guys I'm going to gush over it in a blog thing later. But I want you guys, so tell us about, let's start off with a synopsis and maybe what you hope to do with the series Curses.
Yeah.
I'll let Joe.
So the general, the elevator pitch that we used to give was sort of like Scooby-Doo meets Clerks sort of thing, where it was sort of like a lighthearted monster mystery with mid-20-somethings sort of in a small town, being crass and making, nerd references and movie references and stuff like that. So that's just sort of the shell of the concept. The premise is in this small town that we made up called Hesby, California, which Jacob has based heavily on some of his memories from living in Fresno, California. Basically, without warning, mummies show up. Actual full-blown Egypt-style mummies, and nobody seems to be aware of what's going on except the 2 protagonists, and they've decided that this is going to be their mission. They're going to figure out what, why, when, and how, and try to track down the source of it, and they've decided they're the only ones that can stop it, along with the fact that nobody else believes them anyways. And that's sort of what we're dealing with, introducing some new characters, getting to the bottom of this mummy curse. Why are they showing up in this town specifically? And hijinks and hilarity ensue.
Yes, they absolutely do. It's great. I thought y'all have done a great job of writing the characters, read. And Jacob, I know you're not doing the writing, but the amount of character you've put into just their facial expressions of not just the main characters, but every character, there's a consistency in that quality that, and I am going to gush. I was writing up the blog entry that I was going to do for it. And one thing I was talking about is that sometimes with indie, because you don't have all these editors and corporate publishers kind of helping maintain y'all two's relationship and your cooperation on a piece like this, sometimes with indies, instead of getting Jaws, the Steven Spielberg film, you get Jaws 3. You get the idea was there, but you really poop the bed. And I mean, guys, this is, when we met earlier, I told you, this is something that I would expect to see from a major publisher, quality and all. And it's astounding that it's just you two guys.
In fairness, we do have an editor who we give credit to, and it helps that we get a lot of wild ideas, and the editor kind of reels in some of them. Hey, some of these are great. Let's work on this one. Let's work on that one. One of the things I want to touch on, in addition to that, is Jacob might not be the writer, but he is we have the same sort of sense of humor, and he's such a great artist that I will send him the script, which are my own jokes. And then I'll see the same script superimposed on his sketches, and they make me laugh again because of exactly what you said. Their facial expressions or the beats that they take make it even funnier. It only works because we both have kind of a similar sense of humor, just coming at it from two different aspects of it, essentially.
Yeah. So how did you guys come together to make this book? Like, even if you were friends before, what brought you together?
Yeah, we shared our love for comics before I started this, but when I went back to college and took like a cartooning class, the thesis that I had to come up with, but I just kind of was spitballing ideas, and I didn't like try and say like I need to make the most perfect comic. I was like, I just need to make a comic, so let's just pick monsters or something, monster of the week, and then mummies. I was just drawing mummies in the sketchbook, and I had already kind of drawn concept sketches for Mega and Rosa, so I took those characters, put them in this situation, just made a 12-page story called Mummy Hunters, and it was basically the same kind of rough idea, but I showed it to Joe, and then Joe fell in love with it, and then he kind of took that and ran and got very, very excited.
Yeah, this was just a random side project that Jacob did for a class, and I was so inspired by the look of everything. I loved the character design. I loved mummies, and I was like, so it started with me being like, this is so great. Have you thought about adding this? Have you thought about adding that? And I was so overwhelming Jacob. He goes, listen, no, I haven't thought of any of that. Would you be interested in writing for some of this? And I was like, oh my God, yes. And again, it was all the concepts, the art concepts were there. The look of the town, the look of the art, and especially the look of the characters. I don't even think I knew their names when I first started. And I was like, I looked at them and I said, this person's going to be like that. This person's going to be like this. And it was all based off of how inspired I was with this, just like off the top of the head concept that Jacob came up with. And funny story, the original setup that we had at one of the scenes from his Mummy Hunters, we were like, all right, we're going to build this scene. And in writing, I realized there's too much to get to the scene in the first issue. And so I'm like, we'll throw it in issue 2. And then there was still waiting. Long story short, that the inspiration for it, the thing we were building towards, didn't even show up till issue 3. We did 2 full issues before we even got to the foundation of the idea, which was the parking lot scene, essentially. That was the original thing he drew in Mummy Hunters.
Right.
And go figure it.
Yeah, when they're in front of the video store.
Yeah.
That was like the whole story just took place in front of a video store. But the Kevin character looked a lot different in my original version, but I really like the way he turned out on the new one. I think after Joe wrote him, I knew he looked much different than the way he was portrayed originally.
So again,
I really love that character. It might be my favorite.
It's weird to think that we had a starting point, right? We're like, okay, I got Mummy Hunters. Let me write to get there. And in my head, it was like, do we open with this scene? Is it a flashback? Do we flashback afterwards? Explain how we got there, and then through natural progression, somehow we're 3 issues into and just barely getting caught up to the original scene that we had designed together, essentially.
Did that feel really good to be like, wow, like that really shaped itself naturally? Yes. And that was so deep into the story at that point.
Yeah, it was writing issue 1 was challenging because it was the first time we were collaborated, but writing issue 2 was much more difficult for some reason because I feel like we were working towards something, but we were still in the beginning of the story, so we were trying to get the engine started, and then issue 3 wrote itself pretty much, I feel.
Issue 3 is my favorite issue. Like, it felt exactly like you said, it literally almost wrote itself, and in doing so, I accidentally introduced 2 characters that people really enjoyed and grew a team. I didn't know I was building a team when I started writing the comic.
That's awesome.
And it just came out so well from the foundation laid in 1 and 2, essentially.
And it's so good to hear from like a writer and artist. I feel like a lot of my favorite writers and artists you hear, this is the natural like course of events. You guys didn't try to rush in the first issue to the thing that you wanted to do. You allowed it to naturally build to that. You updated the characters' visuals based off of like the natural way that Joe had caused or had decided a character was going to behave. Like that is, you guys are, I feel like a lot of people like you kind of downplay it as like, oh, that's just something that you do. But especially in a collaborative effort, I feel like it's really difficult to find people who are willing to allow that to happen. I feel like you guys are in a much more unique situation than maybe even y'all realize. Like,
Yeah.
It's really cool.
I have to kind of put myself back in the mindset of when I came up with the mummies in the small town and the modern setting. I just kind of let go and don't try to hold on to something or die on a hill. Just try to let it progress the way it's going to be. And I think that we now it feels natural and now it feels right.
And it's funny, I've heard that from artists, like even musicians who are like, we've had 4 albums out already and nobody knows who we are, and then they finally wrote a hit song and they're being played everywhere, including Starbucks, and they interview them like, what was different? And they're like, for the first time ever, I decided not to, like, essentially what you said, die on every word, every line of the song, how complex the chords were going to be, just sort of like let it casually flow out without overthinking everything. And sure enough, like 10 years into making music, that somebody finally, wrote a huge #1 hit or something like that.
And I think something Jacob said earlier too about like, this wasn't like his grand story that he's been thinking about for millions of years. This was a neat idea that he just kind of had for a class that he had to do, and it built it from there. He wasn't trying to tell his magnum opus on his first, shot out. Which, if this is your first shot out, can't wait to read your magnum opus. But until we get there,
yeah, I take to heart a lot of advice that I listen to podcast interviews with other artists and creators, and their advice always just make and finish a project, a comic, and don't try to make it 100 pages, or whatever. Just do like 4 pages to start and do something smaller and keep building from those failures and successes. And then you learn a lot more by completing projects rather than, writing the most perfect thing and then, pouring a lot of time into it.
Well, I'm sure James, and maybe you can speak to this on, as a comic book shop owner, I'm sure you've had people who are selling their self-made, self-published series, and it's run into a lot of the pitfalls that these guys seem to be avoiding and get canceled and stuff.
Yeah. A lot of times it's just about making sure that you're telling a good story that, is going to communicate something in that one issue. A lot of times people send, like you said, their magnum opus, then they talk about how it's going to go for, issues and issues. And, they've got this idea for this character that's going to spin out of it and whatever. And nobody's ever really wanting to really just tell an interesting story as they're doing it. It's also nice to get stuff that isn't, just completely superhero based. I really enjoyed y'all's comic.
Good.
It was a bit of a breath of fresh air for, some of the other things that we've gotten are, a little bit more dense and a little bit more ambitious, I guess you would say. But be able to communicate something in that one issue and then, build off of it. I think that's just really important.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. So for this next part, I don't want to take too long because we started a little bit late today, and man, we've just been talking. I've enjoyed listening to you guys talk, but I know we can't do this all day long. For this next part, if both of you guys have any other projects, Kickstarters or anything like that you're working on that you want to talk about, or if you have plans for anything else that you're doing together you want to tell us about, we'd love to hear about
Yeah,
it.
Jacob, I'm going to let take over. This is what he does for a living. I have a day job essentially, and I love doing this, and I would put as much time in it as possible. The problem is that obviously, there's not a huge market for this yet. And so as a result, me and Jacob have spitballed other ideas and stuff. A lot of them we're just kind of holding on to them because Jacob's got a lot of projects that are brewing right now. I know that for sure.
Yeah. During last, I think it was like November, I started on this project because it was in the middle of the pandemic, and I didn't have a comic we were working on. I think we were still wrapping up, or we had just wrapped up issue 3, and I was writing because I played Dungeons and Dragons, or I had run a game for my friends, and I wanted to make my own like module. And so I like really sunk deep into writing my own like adventure module. And then, in February of this year, there was like an event on Kickstarter for this sort of thing. And I was like, oh, this would be perfect. I should run and do that. And it ended up being really successful. So now I'm preparing to do my second one. That's kind of a follow-up. And since I did that, I've been doing a lot of illustration work for this sort of thing too. So that's really been what I've been working on. But this coming November, I am running another Kickstarter for my follow-up, Dungeons and Dragons. Well, I say Dungeons and Dragons, but it's like old school, like early 1980s, basic expert rules.
It's kind of like a spin-off of First Edition, would you say, right?
Exactly, something like
Okay.
that. Yeah, so it's about that era, and it's it'll be a lot of fun. But yeah,
and that actually briefly
That's awesome.
reminds me that one of the other concepts we
Yeah.
kicked around, Jacob, that we're still potentially talking about again
Yeah.
with me writing and him drawing was essentially me almost running through telling the story of adventurers going through a D&D campaign, essentially, like putting my core 4 wacky characters that I played over the last 4 or 5 years, sticking them in like a wagon together with each other and forcing them through an adventure and writing that fantasy sort of story already. So we've kicked that idea around a little bit as well.
yeah. And you sent me like a pitch document with like
the
first few pages of
opening
the
scene,
script.
yeah.
And I laughed just because the way I was picturing, what you had written and how I would draw it, and I just thought it was funny. It was, I liked it. I think it was going to be.
Ooh,
That's
I love
awesome.
that.
Yay.
We haven't found
Please
the
let us
time yet
know.
to work on that.
Yeah.
Yes.
But yeah.
Yeah, especially like if Joe's working full time and you've got all these other projects. But if y'all end up doing that, please let us know.
That's what we talked about. The next one might be. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
perfect.
great. Yeah.
That'll be really, really
Couple
cool.
conventions that we're going to coming up at the end of October.
Yes.
I've got Death Ray Expo, which is in Fayetteville, Arkansas, and then Comic Conway, which is the 13th and 14th. I'll be there for the weekend.
And then don't forget, first week of December, we're doing Los Angeles
That's
Comic Con
awesome.
also.
Yeah, it will be LA Comic Con, which will be the biggest convention that we've ever been to.
Yeah, for sure.
So that'll be. I've been there as a patron, but having a table there is going to be something else.
That'll be really.
Congratulations!
Really cool.
That's,
congrats.
That's huge.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I will definitely be seeing you at Comic Conway.
Yeah.
I want to find a way to get to there. I think.
Yeah, it's not far
I'll
from
figure out
Little
my
Rock,
schedule.
so.
Yeah, that'd be a really easy trip. I thought about the Fayetteville one, but I don't know if I can get up there. I mean, it's not that bad of a drive, but it would just be the day.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. We'll see what happens. I'd definitely like to see you in person, though.
Yeah, well, Comic Conway, that'll be that'll be much closer.
Yeah, that'd be perfect. And then really, like, that's it. Unless you guys had anything else you wanted to add for that section.
I think we have anything
Again, for everybody wondering, make sure to check out the episode description and our show notes, either on your podcasting platform you're using right now or on our website, www.vfcomicspodcast.com. So you can find a link to Gelatinous Cubism Press, which is where Jacob is selling a lot of the things that he's worked on, including the book Curses. And yeah, that's issue 3.
Yeah, I think if I remember correctly, we have individual issues for sale, and the packaged
the graphic
trade paperback.
The collection trade, yeah.
So, yeah, everyone should go check that out. So we're going to go ahead and move on. And again, Jacob, Joe, I want you guys to join us in the discussions here. Megan has a couple pieces of news that she really wanted to talk about this week. So, Meg, get it, girl.
Hey. Okay, so the first thing, NASA is releasing an interactive graphic novel, and I thought that was very interesting. It's to help recruit a new generation of astronauts, and I just thought that was super
I'm
fun.
behind
I wanted to
that.
talk about it with you guys.
Initiative.
Yeah,
That would be awesome.
absolutely.
What makes it interactive? Is
Yes. So it is, you can get it online, so you can download the PDF or you can just read it online for free, but also they have like QR codes embedded in the whole thing, and so it also has sort of a augmented reality aspect to it.
Oh, that's cool.
So I know, I think I'm so excited about it. It's 40 pages. I haven't actually read it yet.
It's funny to think that children no longer, like dream of being an astronaut anymore, right? Like that was like the traditional thing. Like, what do you want to do when you grow up? Astronaut, right? Like firefighter, whatever. One of those like careers. And I guess that's diminished enough that we need
that's
comics.
What I was thinking.
I mean, that's super fun. I think that's really neat. Yeah.
I thought the same thing when I was reading it. I was like, isn't this what half of my class wanted to be like in kindergarten? But apparently...
What do they want to be now?
Not so much.
Minecraft streamers?
YouTubers, I think. Yeah.
YouTubers, every single one.
Oh my God.
I heard that the
Right.
number
That's
one
like-
response to what would you like to be when you grow up is famous.
Really?
That's
Oh,
the
well, there you
statistic on the questionnaire. For some reason, that's the career choice that which is sort of like disheartening
What a
kind
weird
of thing. You're like,
Yeah.
I know. I don't know how I feel about
I mean,
that.
there's some
But-
great ways to be famous. There, you don't want to be probably Paris Hilton
No.
famous, but like, maybe, I'm trying to think of like a specifically famous do-gooder person.
Superman.
You want to lean more towards
I guess.
Superman.
Right.
than Paris Hilton.
What? I have another question. That's funny. What if other career choices decided to get in on the make a comic book to inspire kids? That'd be interesting. Collection. The museum curator comic book or whatever it is.
Yes.
The university administration comic book.
That weirdly reminds me.
Yes.
I don't know if you guys
That would
knew
work
this.
for me.
So I believe it's at the Louvre in Paris when the Nintendo DS was out. You could get a specific Louvre like DS cartridge that you put in your DS, and it was a tour game built in that you could play on your DS, and you could only get it there.
That's kind of neat.
That is,
and it was, and I was like, I mean,
love
what a way
that.
to. I mean, it's almost like they were, like you were saying, like thinking of, well, how would we hook somebody? Why would a 10-year-old ever want to go to the Louvre? Oh, there's an exclusive game that talks about all these things on a screen. They'll be interested in that. So I think, comics for all sorts of different jobs. Like, do you want to be a county assessor?
Yes.
Exactly. Yeah.
Can make it a lot more interesting.
A safety
I'm
inspector.
sure there's
Oh my God.
I'm sure there's a free comic book day book being worked on right now, or something like that.
That's awesome.
Because on Free Comic Book Day, they do for kids. They do some pretty interesting little books that are kind of outside of what you would expect.
That's awesome.
We had one this year for earthquake preparedness. And,
really?
Man.
Just all kinds of.
They had a Rosa Parks one this year too.
Oh, really?
Oh, really? Okay, that's pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah,
James,
so-
what's the strangest one you've seen, just off the top of your head, like that you were like, what on earth were they thinking here?
That earthquake preparedness one was pretty interesting. It was actually from
Sounds
Dark
up there.
Horse. I don't know if it came out a couple.
It was
of
from
years
Dark
ago.
Horse.
Wow.
Yeah, I
Okay.
can see that.
Unexpected.
Yeah, not only that, it's it like has the kids kind of sitting around, learning about earthquakes, and then like the earthquake happens, and then they're kind of wandering around, all confused in this post-earthquake land.
Oh my
where
gosh.
they're trying to using their skills that they had to.
Does it
to,
go so far as to
survive.
show the consequences of not being prepared?
Oh, God.
Timmy would have survived if he had only remembered the stop, drop, and roll.
If only.
If only he had covered his neck with his hands.
As we sit here and laugh, like, you know.
No.
Maybe whoever worked on that's watching or something and be able to clue us in on it. But yeah, I mean, it's like somehow one of them falls into a river, and you know, just odd stuff. So yeah,
Man.
but I
One
love
falls into
That's
a river.
surprising.
Like, what happens to him?
But don't spoil it.
I
Come on,
I don't like that
You
at
gotta
all.
read. You gotta
Yeah,
read
don't
and find
spoil
out.
it.
It's called a
Marcus.
teaser. It's called a teaser.
Man,
Tasted it.
And you know what happened. That's why
As a
you're asking.
kid,
You know what
Yeah.
happened.
It was me.
I was so scared of earthquakes as a kid. Like, I thought that the earth was just gonna split open at any moment, and I was just gonna fall
Oh yeah,
to the
Terrifying.
core of the earth.
I definitely
Yeah. Oh yeah.
It was a
thought
big
quicksand
concern.
would be more dangerous than it actually was growing up.
Oh yeah,
yeah, I know.
definitely.
That's quicksand does not get enough attention.
I'm a little
anymore.
disappointed. No, it's a little disappointing.
It was the ultimate death whenever I was a kid. It
Mhm.
was like,
Just
you know, if
Yeah.
you fell into
No,
quicksand,
yeah.
so
Yeah.
it's over.
Yeah,
Yeah, nobody
yeah.
can save you.
And I'm used to there being a sign that says "Warning: Quicksand." You know, like
Yeah.
that's also
That's
true.
meant
Yeah,
to-
Atreyu, no.
has global warming just dried up all the
Oh,
My God.
That went
stop.
dark.
dried up all the quicksand.
We're not going there.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. So if y'all are interested in this, we're gonna include a link to this in our description. There's also an audio version if anyone wants to listen to the audio version, and they're also coming out with a Spanish
That's
version
awesome.
here pretty soon.
Oh,
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I think I'd like to check
Yeah.
out the astronaut comic book.
Yeah, it's called First Woman. It's about the first woman, a fictional character named Callie, who is the first woman
Awesome.
on the moon
Oh.
in this universe. So yeah.
Right on.
pretty cool.
It's a little bit enlightening that the first woman on the moon has to be a fictional character.
I know. I was thinking that while I was looking at it. But
Is
that's
there a long
discussion
list of,
for
Yeah,
of
that's-
humans that have been on the moon? I thought it was one of those things where they like checked the box and we did it, and then they just never bothered to go back, sort of thing.
that's
Yeah,
basically.
that's
Yeah.
pretty much the moon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the moon.
Yeah.
That's pretty much
The story of the moon is we got there.
That's all you
There
need to
wasn't
know
anything
Like,
about
there
the moon.
except for some Transformer spare.
Right.
That's good.
Got out of there.
Uh,
Anyways.
Oh, man.
Oh man.
All right.
All right, so the next thing I had on the list to talk about was a school in Texas recently pulled a YA graphic novel off of their school library shelves over a critical race theory protest.
Ooh.
So, yeah, that's exciting. So a speaking engagement in Texas featuring award-winning children's author Jerry Craft was recently canceled, and his graphic novels pulled from school libraries following complaints from a small group of parents claiming his graphics are promoting critical race theory.
Whoa.
Can I ask what
for the
what
yeah,
were the
I-
comic,
yeah, we're
what were
getting-
the graphic novels about? Like, what is even the premise of them?
Yeah. So a couple of his are one is called New Kid, and then I honestly can't remember the name of the other one, but New Kid is came out last year, I believe, and it won the Kirkus Award, the Coretta Scott King Award, and it was the very first graphic novel to ever receive a Newbery Medal Award.
Wow.
And so, yeah, very good work. And it was about a 12-year-old named Jordan and his experience in a new school as one of the few black kids there. And so his experience kind of
And that's it. And
just being a kid and growing up in that. That's
I-
it.
I
That
think-
is all it's about.
I think we're all
Just a
suffering from the
very-
problem of people not the big scary boogeyman kind of words that nobody really knows what it means, sort of thing, and you lump something
Yeah.
like socialism and
Mhm.
attach it to anything and be like, oh god, it's terrible, and it's just like taxes for the fire department or something like that,
know.
and they're like, no, it's socialism, probably, and without actually knowing what any of the phrases mean. But I think if you took those same
Right.
parents and got rid of that concept and said, hey, how do you feel about a comic book where the main character is a black kid struggling to live in a new town or something like that? They're like, yeah, it sounds like a regular story, you know?
Well,
Yeah,
Sounds like
yeah.
a great, relatable
and I saw that the
experience, yeah, for
author,
a lot of
the
people.
author didn't even say like, oh, like you'll find information about critical race theory in here. And to the point that when someone tweeted asking him how this book was banned because them and their 4-year-old read it, he was just like, I guess apparently I'm teaching critical race theory. Like, he was just like, news to me. And then I saw another place, Megan, I don't know, I found another news article about it, and you tell me if this is correct. And it was just like, yeah, something like 400 out of the 80,000, you know, kids, you know, parents who were upset. And so it's a very small group.
That's insane. They were able to alter the curriculum for the whole group. That's
insane.
yeah.
I also want to know how many of those parents even read the book. Like, you know, like
that's a great question.
Because I think the absolute foundation behind. So I have a problem with something and it needs to be removed. Needs to start with great. How much of it do you even know about? Because if the answer is nothing,
I think it's quote point to
Yeah, how was the first question not, well, which part of the text
what is this?
Do you feel
exactly.
is offensive
on which
to you,
page
and how
is this bringing harm, and what kind of harm do you think is the possibilities that could be happening? That's just the basic day one conversation, I think. I would imagine.
It's just amazing that, you know, the right has gotten so good at almost like weaponizing words, being able to take something like critical race theory, which was, you know, probably the name of an academic paper or a book somebody put out, and, you know, making it such a monster, you know.
Oh, and they did the same thing with like Common Core back in the day too, where they applied what was something simple to a million things that upset them, and most of them don't
ends up being linked to you know, any, you know, type of prejudice or, you know, fear that someone has, you know, becomes, you know, it's just right there. It pops into people's heads when they hear it, because it's been used that way on TV, on, you know, Fox News or whatever. And it instantly elicits something that they're afraid of.
Yeah.
And these, you know, these parents flip out over it and not even know what it's really what that term means, you know.
And you know, this is going to maybe sound awful coming from me, but like, you know, if someone's not informed and they're trusting someone to inform them about it and they're informing them incorrectly, like, that does suck, because we all have plenty of things that we allow others who we believe are the experts to help inform us. But in this case, this, you know, it sounds so absurd, especially because Texas being a largely conservative state and only that small of a percentage of people are even against it. It sounds to me like a small group has managed to blow something out of the water that most people around them don't even agree with them on. They just decide they knew the right buzzword, and the right buzzword to yell was critical race theory.
You're 100% right.
To get what they wanted.
But touching on that for a second, there's two things that we're talking about here, right? Like, first of all, you're 100% right. We live in a society, we can't be experts at everything, right? So at some point, you have to say, listen, there's something wrong with the plumbing in my house. I've hired an expert to give me an opinion on what he thinks is going on, and, you know, that sort of thing like that. It's entirely something different when a 20-page graphic novel or whatever it is causing potentially an uproar. You actually have the time to become an expert on this thing that you are claiming that you don't like, are offended by. Like, it doesn't take the amount of time it would take to become an immunologist or whatever to read a 20-page graphic novel and say, I didn't like this, and express actual reasons why. Now, granted, I'm assuming nobody knows why they don't like it. It sounds ridiculous. I don't know if there's a second side of the story where they have read it and there's specific scenes that someone's upset about, and we're not hearing that aspect of it. But I'm probably safe to assume that that's not what's going on. I'm guessing that it's just the name of it along with the label, and everyone said it's got to be terrible. Again, we're talking about half hour of your time to check something out to see if you do or don't like it. And then if there are actual issues and concerns, that's worth talking about, I think. But, you know.
And I think it's something that needs to be recognized is that, like, so the basic idea for critical race theory, from what I've read, you know, about its origins, is just about a lot of it deals with institutionalized racism. Like, it's not something that necessarily anyone is doing on purpose, but it's an effect of a long time of, slavery and then segregation. And, like you can't just erase those things. Like the second, they made black people vote, or like, it's like the moment they made women vote, it's like things didn't immediately change across the world and everyone became open-minded and the way institutions ran changed. These things are kind of built into the history, and we need to address that.
But without even,
and that is offensive to some of these people, and to that I say.
But without even diving, I mean, you're 100% right. But without even diving into, I mean, everything comes with baggage in the sense that there are people who consider themselves very liberal and want to teach critical race theory and do it in an incredibly wrong way. And the 1 out of 1,000 people that do that is the one that gets highlighted by
is the example.
This is what could be going wrong. Let's leave that alone for a second.
Absolutely, yeah.
This isn't a book that has a label on it that says "Find your critical race theory here" with 2 arrows pointing down at the book. It's just a book.
Yeah.
Yep.
So without diving into a philosophical concept of what does this critical race theory mean, or how can it be applied, or are there wrong ways and right ways to teach critical race theory, that's not even the issue. The issue is the book. The creator has no idea what anybody's talking about. It's almost like somebody accidentally slapped the wrong, like a sticker on the cover of a book that wasn't normally there, and they ran with it, like the equivalent of getting like a for sale sign on something that's not for sale. This should have been quickly corrected. Hey guys, whoa, mistake. Not that concept has nothing to do with this. If you don't believe me, take 20 minutes and look at it yourself. Tell me where the book hurts you, sort of thing. I feel like it's a simple solution without having a long philosophical debate as to what is and how to define critical race theory.
Well, and that same thing could be said, as much as people need to be like reading the book to even understand if they have a problem with the book, I'd almost wonder too if they have an understanding of critical race theory in the first place, and whether or not they actually have a problem with it. Or there's you brought up earlier, like it is easier now to, like, it's 30 minutes out of your day to read that book, and you can research things. The internet gives you all those tools, but it also falsely plants the idea in people's heads that they are experts on things that they've not really read about entirely, or read a credible source about. And so that person becomes dangerous because they are spreading misinformation and planting false ideas into people's heads. And that now, I mean, definitely, like, being in what is looking like a post-truth society, like, is a, like, really contagious problem, especially I think, like, in a state like Texas, where that can be a really divisive issue.
Well, imagine any other topic, right? Like anything else at all. Imagine critiquing something without having seen it. What if you were a movie critic and you were like, I'm reviewing the new James Bond movie that came out. Well, have not seen it. Don't know anything about it. Let me tell you what I don't like about it. I don't like this James Bond walking around doing whatever it is he's doing. Like, that would be ridiculous on any subject, regardless of what it was, to say, I don't like, and no one else should be allowed to see a thing I myself have not seen.
Yes.
Well, and Joe, I think I heard you right earlier. Basically, you were like, without even getting into all the philosophy and talking about even the critical race theory, we literally have a book, and a juvenile fiction book that is going to be relatively short, that we can say, open this up and show me what is offensive to you. Like, unlike a lot of things, we have a literal, physical, easy to navigate thing that we can, like, you can put your finger on. Where did it touch you?
Yeah. No. Yeah. Where did the book hurt you? Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I will say that this isn't every, parent in this school district. There are a lot of people speaking out who are like, I am very upset that this group of people has made this happen, and this does not, this is not representative of everyone here.
And the nice thing to see is that it is like I think I said 400 something out of like 80,000.
80, over 80,000 people in the
it does show the power of the, like, loud minority on the internet, where, like, a couple people can take over thousands. on the internet and in the news cycle. And so,
No, you're right. And I would, if it was just 400 people were upset about something and that was the end of the story, you'd be like, this isn't news. The fact that 400 out of 10,000 were upset of something that caused it to be removed as a result.
to be removed.
Is
They
bananas.
literally changed a curriculum, banned a book, and it's just like
It's scary and
man.
terrifying. Yeah, it's terrifying.
Yes.
Like it's sad. It's sad that people lost the opportunity to be exposed to that book, and it's terrifying that small group has that.
I got to tell you, I'm enjoying this
Absolutely.
conversation. I did not expect to go into a deep dive of this topic when we started talking about Wolverine comics about an hour ago, and somehow we ended up just really taking on the heavy
Sorry.
topics. I'm all for it. This is great.
I told Megan, I was just like,
Yeah.
great, we're gonna have a light interview. We're gonna talk about what do kids want to be when they grow
Yeah.
up, and then we're gonna talk about banned books
Yeah,
and critical race
yeah,
theory.
yeah.
I woke up this morning and was like reviewing everything, and I was just like, I shouldn't have
No,
put this
and
on the news.
this-
No!
This is gonna get
No, and this
intense.
is the kind of stuff I want to talk about. It's the why I don't have a Marvel or DC podcast that I ended up putting together. It's because there are important things to talk about. This comics are just as valid of literature as anything else, and these sort of issues do happen. And look, like you said, this was the first graphic novel to win a Newbery Award. That is something to pay attention to. That means that this is a very good book. And then now it's caused, granted it's only a small number of people, but it's gotten this much attention because of the story that it's trying to tell. This not just important in comics and graphic novels. This is important in the world, and I love it. And Megan, you did a fantastic job.
I'm
so
all
glad
for
you
it,
found
and I'm here
Yeah.
to talk about this stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, no, and I'm super
Yay.
Joe. I'm not gonna lie. Every time you got going, I was just like, "Yes, go,
Yeah,
faster,
absolutely.
harder."
Wouldn't it be funny?
Yeah.
This is
You
what
guys
we're
did
doing.
no vetting process before this interview whatsoever. Wouldn't it be funny if you brought it up and you're like, "Damn right, they should have banned that," but like it's something you're like,
Yeah.
"Oh, no. Who's our guest today?"
I was like,
I
this will be
know.
awkward if
Yeah,
they
yeah,
are like
I
hyper conservative or something like that, and we just didn't
I
see
know.
that coming.
Yeah.
And,
Which, like,
I actually,
that's-
I said that to my,
that's interesting.
I said that to my husband this morning. I was
Yeah.
just like,
I
I
hope
think
this
these
works
guys
out.
are cool,
We
but
have
this
it
could go
for the
real
record.
down.
I guess it wasn't a mystery. The comic that we're promoting has 2 female characters of mixed race, and one of them is also LGBTQ. So it's hard to be like, and we're very
Yeah, and that's-
conservative.
yeah.
Like that would have caught me by surprise if that were the case. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's hard
I
to
see.
jump into that.
Whereas in reality, I see your book Curses as promoting critical race
Right.
theory.
Oh no!
here.
Don't. Jeez.
But
Oh,
anyways,
God.
no, I'm not. That's
Y'all
too
have an
far. But
agenda.
yes. And honestly, like, if there was some disagreement in the conversation, to me, like, that's good listening, and I would have enjoyed it, and I would have thanked you
Well-
for your time and never told you again.
I'm all for civil discourse
Um,
one way or the other. So yeah, I'm here for it.
Yes.
That's Joe's job.
Yeah.
So you can also tell who the introverts in this group of people are too, I think. But I love it. I love it, love it, love it. Anyways, so we are going to go ahead and move on time-wise. And so the last thing that I'm going to do today is one of my favorite segments. It's where we get our guests to recommend a graphic novel or something to read. As always, I don't enforce this strongly, but I ask that the recommendations be something that could be read usually in a single sitting with little to no continuity knowledge needed, just in case the collected issues are part of like an ongoing series. And so, Joe, let's start with you.
Great. So the one that I guess I'm recommending is Gideon Falls. It starts and stops in 6 books. There's nothing else to it other than this one set story, cohesive in the set universe. You would call it horror, maybe like horror mystery is I guess how it starts off. Like it's definitely a deep-seated mystery that has intense kind of horror vibes to it. But the supernatural starts taking place, and by halfway through the story, pretty much you are like dealing with multiple realities and other universes and stuff like that. And it really pushes the limits of unique storytelling, like I've never seen before. I can't say like, oh yeah, this reminds me of. Absolutely not. And I think it might have gotten picked up they're trying to option it for a TV show. I think if I remember correctly.
Ooh.
I'll have to double check that. But
Awesome.
Yeah.
I feel like
It'd be interesting to see how they take the artwork and
You would need like a team of people to try to like build the set that works with that sort of kind of art concept for sure.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to check that out because I know you've recommended this to me before when we spoke on the phone a few weeks back, but I still haven't read it. I need to.
Yeah, if you're a David Lynch fan or horror fan, it's really great. It's great.
Oh yeah, good stuff. Jacob, what did you think?
I had two that I was going to recommend. One of them's funny, and one of them's a little bit more depressing. But I sometimes will get graphic novels through the library system nearby, and
Yes.
library.
The library.
We work at the library.
And I was surprised that they had these titles, and I was like, wow, that's amazing. Because recently, I had heard of Dan Clowes' earlier works like Ghost World, but I never read it. I actually went back and read it. I don't really like it that much. It's okay. But one of his books that I absolutely love is called Mr. Wonderful. It's a really funny story about like an awkward 40-something trying to date again, and then it kind of like spins off in this like crazy comedy drama story. Highly recommend that one. It's a really short read, but love his style. It's kind of a different format too. It's like wider than it is tall. It's a kind of like a Sunday strip layout. That's one I recommend. And another one is a Shortcomings by Adrian Tomine.
Oh man, yes.
That book is fantastic. It's he's kind of writing a little bit as himself as this kind of repulsive main character. It's fantastic read. I don't want to give anything away because I would just say it's a drama. There's no comedy. It's not funny, but it's really good.
They're adapting that too. Randall Park is
he?
adapting that.
Oh wow, what's it called again?
Yeah.
Shortcomings.
That's awesome.
Dan Clowes and Adrian Tomine are both big influences on my art style. I think Dan Clowes more so than the cartoony kind of illustration.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool. Well, guys, those all sound like great recommendations. I hope our listeners check out those books. I'm going to try to check out what I can. I am starting to go broke. James, you want to give me
library,
some?
Yes.
Man.
Yeah, but I need new stuff.
I know.
I don't want to keep it.
Yes.
The library's got a limit on that sort of thing.
I'm
I work
surprised
there, so they know where to find me.
There are relatively new titles that they'll add to the system.
I've always been impressed with like some of the things that we do carry, and even like the full volumes off. I've also been disappointed by how like there have been some series I found where we're just missing random volumes, even though we're not just one library. We're actually like, what is it, 8 to 10 connected libraries?
No, there's 13.
13. There's 13 libraries, and I still can't find like a volume 3 of something. But I mean, there's other ways. I'm being picky. I can't read everything. There's so much good stuff.
By the way, I confirmed what I said earlier. I just Googled it. Gideon Falls has been picked up. It's got a director and everything. Not 100% sure what network it's going to, but it is going to be a TV show, it looks like.
Yeah.
Now I have to read it.
Yes. So much good stuff. Well, that is going to be it for us today. Thank you, Joseph and Jacob, for joining us this week. It was great having you on. You are fantastic.
Thanks.
Thank you for having us.
Again, make sure to check our episode notes for the links to Gelatinous Cubism Press and to find all of their work. A special thanks again to Jeff Matika for our new original music. You can find more of his original work on Spotify, Instagram, and Twitter on the links also in the description. Jeff, you are a gorgeous talent, and I hope we can get more from you as we continue. And then more thanks out to 806 Films, who is now editing all of our video and audio. Thank you so much, Zach. You're doing a fantastic job. It was me and my microphone that were the problem last week. Nobody else. So make sure you can listen to us every week on Tuesdays on your favorite podcasting platform. So make sure to subscribe so you don't miss anything. But your search for great stories, authors, and artists doesn't have to end with this episode. You can visit vfcomicspodcast.com for more great free content like episode transcriptions, upcoming stories, Kickstarters, education recommendations, and much more. Does anybody have something they want to say before we go?
No.
Have a great week. Yeah, have a great
Yeah.
week. Thanks
Yeah.
again to Joe and Jacob for coming. It was really great getting to talk to you.
Yeah, we had a blast, man.
Yes, thank
Yeah,
you
we
guys
wanna
so
come back.
much.
Yeah.
Go read
Thanks,
curses,
guys.
everyone.
Yeah, go read curses.
Yeah, go
buy
read
it.
curses. Absolutely.
Awesome.